there's so much to think about when she did an interview that said, I would change nothing. Didn't even say she would change like the approach to the issues. All she said was, well, I'm a different person. But I'm a different person who would have changed none of the policy means you're not so different at all if that's where your mind is. I want to remind you, so we talk about the withdrawal of Afghanistan is probably one of the lowest moments in the Biden administration. And not only did we lose 13 American troops, young troops, the scenes were so reminiscent of Vietnam and this kind of pushback. Remember, we thought we had months before the Taliban and other terrorist groups would be able to seize Kabul. So we thought we had a lot longer time to plan the evacuations. And of course, instead of it taking 30 days, Will, I think it took 3. Was it 3 days, right?
The entire withdrawal took about a week, but the Taliban was there almost immediately. Yeah. And we saw the chaos that ensued. We saw the helicopters getting people out of the embassy, which they had even said, they even said, you're not going to see another Saigon. That was the words of the administration. And it was almost carbon copy imagery from that. But I think we should also play this from Kamala Harris because, she doubled down on an earlier statement to some degree. This was with an interview with Dana Bash in 2021 during the withdrawal. And this is going to be Bite 5, guys. This is what she had to say to Dana Bash about the decision-making then when all the scenes were unfolding. Let's play it.
You just made a really big decision. Afghanistan.
Yes.
Were you the last person in the room?
Yes.
And you feel comfortable?
I do. And I'm going to add to that. This is a president who has an extraordinary amount of courage.
So she said she was the last person in the room on the decision of the withdrawal, and she is comfortable with that. That's what she said while all of this was going on. And then we know she said on The View that nothing comes to mind in terms of what she would have done differently in the past 4 years, 3.5 really. But Jordan, you were mentioning and teasing out to the audience that our FOIA request, which went out on August 30th, really the last day of that withdrawal, because we knew that we needed to get in quickly and try to get them to preserve information and get it to us as quickly as possible. Right. But then we had to sue about a month later. The State Department, the Pentagon, the ODNI, Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Central Command to get documentation. And we've been getting documentation for years. They've been producing documents. But this, as we've said many times, you're looking for the nugget in the gold mine. Unfortunately, it's a very dark nugget that we had to find. And this is what we got.
That's right. And so this is what happened. We filed, again, our FOIA just 4 days after that incident at Abbey Gate, killing 13 Americans, injuring others. And part of our FOIA was about the withdrawal and leaving our translators, those Afghans who bravely fought side by side with our U.S. military, leaving them behind, not taking into account their families, their children, or them themselves, and what would happen to them once they would be identified, as they would easily be so, by the Taliban and groups like ISIS-K. How are we going to protect them when we did a full withdrawal? We didn't keep the military base. We didn't keep the huge airfield. Donald Trump had always said, when he talked about withdrawing from Afghanistan, he never meant no troops in Afghanistan. He meant there would be a major presence there in a protected zone and control of the largest airport. Why? It had strategic significance both inside Afghanistan, but also in regards to China, Iran, and Russia. But Joe Biden didn't agree with this. So out of this FOIA, which we file on the 30th, we then get a letter. So this is from the Taliban. Remember, they took over the government immediately when we withdrew. And this is a summons. It is a summons that was dated just a few days after our withdrawal, September 5th. Okay, and the September 5th summons was from the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. It is this is a translation of the Taliban's summons letter. This is a summons from the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Based on the accurate information of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, you all had worked very closely with the occupying forces of the United States, the American anti-Islamic forces in recent years. Therefore, you are ordered to submit yourself to the nearest field office of the Islamic Emirate, where you will be served to face justice within the legal framework of the Islamic Emirate. It's, of course, Sharia law. And get this part, because it's never just about the individual in the Islamic world who may have taken the action that the new dictators don't like. Listen to the fear down your spine here. Your failure to surrender yourself will have serious consequences, both to you and your family, as all of you, including your families, will be severely prosecuted and punishment under the Islamic law of the Emirate. Regards, Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. And Will, to this date, we honestly don't know how many brave men and women and their families who wanted to stand by who they saw as freedom fighters to finally free them from the control of the oppressive Taliban. How many of these individuals are no longer with us because our withdrawal didn't plan the removal of them? You know, we should, if we had to, it would be better to shut down our southern border for a couple of years so that these people were able to get back to the United States, because these would have been people who ultimately were great Americans because they risked their life with our soldiers. These are the kind of immigrants you want in your country. People who did the right thing, and yet we left them behind. And, you know, if this becomes a pattern of the United States of America, guess what happens when we come in, when unfortunately we may have to go into countries like this in the future? And we hope we never do, but we're prepared to always do so. If we do this again, I don't want this blood on our hands as Americans. But right now, this blood is on the hands of Kamala Harris because of that answer on The View. She could have said a couple of things, like that withdrawal should have been better, and we should have better treated those who worked with us. We should have had them out before the withdrawal. We should have made sure they had flights as well as their families had flights. And we should have put pressure on the Taliban that if we couldn't get to everyone, if they touched any of them, we'd be right back in Afghanistan blowing up their strongholds so their families would be at risk. Now, I could see a Donald Trump or a Mike Pompeo saying that. You know who I don't see ever saying that? Kamala Harris or laughing and hopping Tim Walz.
That's right, Jordan. And honestly, when
he's real goofy and gets a lot of things wrong, he's kooky.
That's right. Well, when you look at
kooky people running our government,
when you look at this letter and this summons, really, and it names those three individuals, the problem here also is that we know that a lot of people, because of the chaos, were able to get on those flights, get out of country, that were not vetted at all.
Of course.
It was the worst way to run it. Instead of getting the people that actually did help us, they got a lot of bad actors, including one we'll talk about with Rick Grinnell that was arrested in Oklahoma, planning a terror attack on this November 5th, Election Day, to sow chaos in America. He was here on a special immigrant visa from Afghanistan. He fled with the withdrawal, but this wasn't a helper of the United States. This was the chaos of the moment because they didn't have the procedures and the structure in order to get people that they could fully vet out. The unvetted ones got to America, and the people like these that were our helpers were left behind to face execution under Sharia law.
This idea that she cannot come up with anything different she would do. I mean, this is the governing style she wants to bring to the White House. So really all we're getting is a younger Joe Biden. We're not going to get real changes. We have someone who can't admit when things could have gone better. This is dangerous for our country because I think any honest elected official, if you were a vice president in administration running for president and you have the benefit of hindsight is 2020, you should be able to answer those questions, not to blame necessarily your predecessor or the current president that you serve, but to say, you know what, we learned a lot there. And we learned that didn't work. So under my watch, that will never happen again. So you can take a question that may make you sound weak and actually make you sound tough. And it didn't throw Biden under the bus. It didn't throw yourself under the bus. It said, we have learned on all these issues what we need to do different so it never happens again. But that's not what we're hearing at all from Biden Walz.